Hi, I'm Christy Davis, Metrotex Forms and Contracts. Today I have Charles Kramer joining us, the co-chair of the Broker Lawyer Committee, of Counsel for Republic Title, and a practicing attorney to discuss tips and tricks on the TREC revised contracts that will be mandatory as of April 1, 2021. Charles, thanks again for being here with us to talk about the revised contracts that are going to be mandatory as of April 1. Now we want to just follow up with the HOA, or the Addendum for Properties Subject to Mandatory Membership in a Property Owners Association.
Yes, why do these things have such a mouthful? Yes, I call it the HOA, the mandatory HOA addendum, but the formal is, takes you forever. Not for use with condominiums. So remember that we're talking about an HOA with assessments, but it's not it's not legally a condominium. It's a single family home that you own the land underneath it. The big change here revolved around those fees that the HOA sends kind of like as a bill to the title company and say, collect these fees from the buyer at closing and collect these fees from the seller at closing. And in the contracts, we kind of allocate those fees between seller and buyer. The first point I want to make is that the cost of the resale certificate is not part of that. So most of the time, what is checked in the HOA addendum is box A1. Seller will pay for and deliver a resale certificate. So that's kind of a pre-allocated charge, and the seller pays for it. We're not talking about that. But under the current contracts, they basically make a distinction between reserves and deposits for reserves. They say if it's a reserve or a deposit or something of that nature, working capital contribution, which would be more of a condo type thing, that's a buyer cost. The buyer pays for that. And then for everything else, we'll allocate it between seller and buyer according to a cap. And we were always getting into wars at closing, and the title officers would be, no, that isn't a reserve. Yes, it is. We don't know. And so the Broker Lawyer Committee said, let's just simplify this, guys. Let's just say that all fees that are connected with the transfer and sale of this property imposed by the HOA will be allocated between the buyer and seller as follows. Buyer will pay the first X, and there's a blank for that, and seller will pay the remainder. So it's freely negotiable. It means that if you wanted the seller to pay for everything, then you could put in 0 in that blank, and seller will pay the remainder. If you wanted buyer to pay for everything, I would suggest a number of $10,000, because you'll never have $10,000 of HOA fees, and that means the buyer pays for everything. And you could go in between that to allocate that. Now, yes, it is a challenge, folks, to negotiate fees when you don't know what they are. But we have been doing this basically since before this form was changed. So I just want everyone to know that this stuff about reserves are always paid by the buyer, that's gone. And so we now have an allocation of fees between seller and buyer, and we're going to follow that.
And a great opportunity again here for communication between the buyer's agent and the listing agent. Buyer agent, listing agent, do you know how much this is? How can we work together? Or you as the listing agent know it, share it, and you know that information. One, it may be a tool for negotiation. The other, it may be, how do we get this deal to the closing table? How do we work together in cooperation? Those types of things. And the other is, if you're working outside of your expertise, although this is residential, when we discuss this as a condominium, if you don't understand those condominium complexes and that is out of your element, maybe you need to reach out to your broker, find out, is that an area you need more education on? Do you need to be a part of that? Do you need to find another agent to assist, refer this out? Those types of things. But this document, I think this is a great change because it was always very confusing for the buyer, but I still have $200 that wasn't used. Why is there $200 that's not being used? Or same thing with the seller, back and forth. It was always a struggle in regards to that. So this is a little clearer, although it may not be in detail clear. It's clear on one end as to all fees, and then it's unclear as to what those fees
what are.
They?
Here's one thing agents should know too, because they may in fact see this bill from the HOA sent to the title company, and the HOA thinks that they're doing the right thing. Well, this is a transfer fee, collect this from the seller. This is a contribution, collect this from the buyer. HOAs sound like that. I did a great impression of an HOA.
You did.
But the title company's going to ignore that. And they're going to say, no, the parties have, I keep putting it the wrong way, the parties have reallocated this cost between each other contractually. So a title company can and should ignore the request of the HOA as to who pays what and look at the contract. That is your roadmap and say, no, buyer pays the first $300, the balance goes to the seller, so that's $600. So here you go. It's that simple. So it's simpler, and that's what we want for clarity. Is to be able to negotiate. You need simplicity. You don't need a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, which complicate the matter.
100%. Well, thank you so much again for assisting us today in the revised contracts and how they impact our buyers and sellers. And we as members of MetroTex need to be able to advise our clients. Appreciate your time today, Charles.
Thank you, Christy. It was fun. I appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us. Please make sure to check out our YouTube channel for more contract tips and tricks and other videos to assist you in your business.